Well, if you can't tell, since I'm crazy enough to record this outside on Thursday during what's supposed to be a thunderstorm, this is the mood for some of us right now in Illinois. We'll see if anybody can pick up our mood on this episode. We've got some happy warriors with us, so maybe that's going to help our mood here in Illinois. But there's anger, there's frustration. We got to change things. So let's make it happen, starting with this podcast. I'll do some introductions. We have two different former state representatives. So we're not overly creative, I guess, in our guest this week. We've got Mark Batinick. He was the former Republican floor leader down in Springfield. Now he's a pollster and a senior fellow for the Illinois Policy Institute and a frequent guest. Mark, what's up, man?
Things are great. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to the show. Good topics.
All right, we got Tom Demmer, former state representative and now the president of the Lee County Industrial Development Association and also a senior fellow for the Illinois Policy Institute. So apparently we have an unpaid sponsorship from IPI. Chris or Michael, you want to send them our address? We can, we're consultants, so we'll send an invoice, of course.
Oh,
Tom,
I'm sure the check's in the mail, right?
Exactly. Tom, I got off track. What's up, man? Glad to have you.
I just follow wherever Batnick goes, I follow.
Oh, you just, well, never mind. We've got Michael. We've got Chris, as always. What's up, you two?
What's going on? It's only like 1,000 degrees outside, it's hot.
There's a reason why I wore white, so you can't see just how much I sweat over the next hour plus.
Well, that's the reason why I'm inside, Collin, rather than be outside, which you are for some inexplicable reason.
He's dressed like he's on the beach or something.
Oh yeah, right. Chris, we got. I almost put on a Hawaiian shirt this week, but I didn't. I should have read the memo, Chris.
Well, Collin, I'll be honest with you. I was getting ready for the show about 5 minutes ago because I have no concept of time management, and my mother was watching me pick out a shirt. And she says, "You should wear something Hawaiian today. You should wear something different. Everyone else is going to be in polos." So that's why I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt today.
Oh my goodness! Next time, text me. I'll throw on a Hawaiian shirt. I got some good ones.
I have no intention of ever matching with you, Collin.
Come on now. It'd be cute. We could match.
We're never on the same page. Why would we start now, dude?
This is fair. This is fair. All right. So speaking of not being on the same page, last week we recorded and released a special episode focusing on where Republicans can win in 2026. The idea was to really use data to drive the conversation. How did we perform in certain districts in 24? What does that mean for 26? What did we see in the turnout in 24 that might impact 2026? We had a whole discussion. So if you haven't watched it, make sure you go on our YouTube channel or on our if you like to listen to podcasts, you could go on the audio version on Spotify. But go check that out if you haven't watched it. It's like 18 hours long, so don't blame me if you didn't get a chance to get through it. But we then said, hey, if you guys have thoughts, share your thoughts. So not only have we opened it up to our current guests with Mark and Tom, but we've gotten a number of emails, calls, texts, social media comments about the episode. So we're going to talk it through for a little bit here. Just get everybody's feedback and their thoughts. Where did we get it right? Where did we get it wrong? I know Chris got it wrong a lot. So, how wrong was Chris on the episode? So as our guests, Mark, Tom, not to put you on the spot, but if you guys had any thoughts, I figured we should give you guys a chance to go first.
Yeah, well, first, Mark's going to get into the weeds on the numbers. He'll probably be correcting you in decimal points and things like that over the next couple minutes. So that's fine. I'll let him do that. But one of the things I think that you really got right, and it came up, not explicitly, but just sort of in the narrative with a lot of the races you talked about, is just how much candidate quality matters, especially when we're working in districts where you've got, they were drawn based on numbers. They were drawn based on trying to have a specific number of districts with a specific Democratic majority in each of those districts. But you kept coming back to this theme of, this candidate overperforms the top of the ticket. This candidate underperforms the top of the ticket. We're not going to win any of these districts by just being the Republican on the ballot. They were specifically drawn not to be districts that you can win by being the Republican on the ballot. And it shows you, I got a feel for this too. When I was running statewide, getting to spend time in a lot of these other districts where you could, it was like night and day going from one district to another where we had a really good candidate. And the number of people who get fired up around that, the number of, I always kind of described it as the number of just normal people, average everyday folks who would show up at some of these people's fundraisers. It's a bad sign when you go to a district and the only people who show up at the fundraisers are the precinct committeemen.
Yeah, or like other candidates. Yeah.
Yeah, fellow candidates. It's a great sign when you go there and they've got, friends and neighbors and coworkers and, this loose social network of connections, folks like that who show up. So I just thought that was a huge takeaway from this is if the idea is that there's going to be a mathematical solution to this, the cards are stacked against us because they specifically drew it to take that away. And so the only way to get around that is to have quality candidates recruited.
Yeah, so at the end of last cycle, so at the end of the 2022 election, we did a much more in-depth study, which is still on CORE's website, by the way, if anyone wants to dive into it. We had more time, and I had more money to burn. Obviously, with the 15-month-old at home, I'm not blowing cash as much as I used to on politics. But when we did what I thought was a groundbreaking study, it kind of got ignored by most, but it was really eye-opening for us on what led to candidates over and underperforming. And what we learned was candidate quality has as much of a 3% plus or minus, so a total of a 6% impact. A great candidate, regardless of how good of a race they ran, of how well or underfunded they were, a great candidate could gain you 3 points and a bad candidate could lose you 3 points. And so you're talking about a 6-point swing in districts just based on that. Just, forget whether a race is run, whether we do or don't spend millions, just the quality of a candidate can impact the final result by 6 points. So, Tom, you're 100% correct. Mark, I know you've got some thoughts.
Yeah, I do. It was, I like the way that you came up with some sort of metric because you have to come up with something and how you perform versus the top of the ticket, I think is one of the most important things that you can look at. I also like the fact though that you broke out Trump because Trump has really upended that where you usually see it all the way down where you'll have districts where the generic might be +5 Republican and the Trump number's +10, or it's the opposite where the generic's +5 and the Trump number's -10. DuPage County in 2016 was probably a big example of that, especially 2016, even to a certain extent in 2018. They've started to merge more. I think you may go from memory on the races that you've looked at, but I've seen over the cycles that the Republican number and the Trump number have seemed to converge a little bit. Mm-hmm. All that said, while you're looking at things versus the top of the ticket, candidate quality matters. Here's a big one. Incumbency matters. I mean, you just generally see the incumbents overperform because people have met them. They've seen that they're nice. They've gotten their mail. They've got to know them on a personal level, whether it be at a seat check or a chamber function or something like that. And then clearly also money matters. So some of the best races, you can't really judge it solely on win and losses. Some of the best races I've seen that I've been around have been people who've actually lost their campaign, but man, came close or so dramatically overperformed in the face of going against a big name or a big amount of money or an incumbent or something like that. But candidate quality matters a lot. And at some point, we're going to have to start worrying about that at the top of the ticket. So I think that's really where we're going to be hurt so far. The cycles that we really don't have those quality candidates running at the top of the ticket. And that's going to help hurt the drafting down ballot.
Mark, to that point, so the baseline that we created, because you're right, we did 2 metrics on purpose, because we've seen the exact same thing you have, that in some areas, Trump was like a leading indicator where 2, 4, 6 years, this was what happened in Lake and DuPage, where Trump was a leading indicator. And now, unfortunately, everyone else's performance has kind of caught up to where Trump was underperforming. Or in other cases, they weren't necessarily as tied together. Will County is a good example of that, where you saw Republicans doing quite well and then Trump caught up to the Republicans. So it's right. Keeping them separate was an important thing. Our baseline is created by 12 different races. So it gives you that balance where you don't have a situation where, Dan Brady, for instance, running statewide, did great in a certain region. Tom, actually, we had to do a special thing in your region because you overperformed in your region, and you can't assume other candidates will as well. So that's why we used 12 races to make sure that we could achieve a fair baseline across the state. But then you also got to look at Trump, because if somebody overperforms Trump in their district, yeah, they might have lost by 10 or 15. But if they overperform Trump, it's worth talking about. If they won, but they underperformed Trump when everyone else was overperforming Trump, right, you got to look at it. And so that's why we do that exercise. As you guys saw, I know you guys saw the episode, sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes there's people we really like or people who were clients of ours that, maybe were lower than we would have wanted, but the data is the data. You got to make sure you have a fair way to look at it. That's the only way we can start to project out where are their wins and where aren't their wins. And the other thing I'll say before I open it up to more thoughts is Mark, that same study we did that identified how much a quality candidate can impact the final result also looked at incumbency. And we saw a 3-point bump as a minimum for an incumbent. So even bad incumbents, the Rachel Venturas, the Ann Stavro Murrays, the ones who don't get much of a bump in performance, they still got a 3-point incumbency bump. And then others who do really well, the ones that their constituents really like them, the Santa Litras, the Lahas, and back when you guys were That's where you could get a bigger bump than 3 points. But
Yeah,
even a bad incumbent.
throw a brand out there. Everybody she just overperforms, and we pulled it. And I looked at these numbers. I'm like, wow, I don't know if it's her name, if it's how long she's been there, the incumbency, all of it. But she has done something to entrench herself with that community, somebody that people know and like.
Yep.
With the incumbency thing too, I mean, some of those folks who have managed to win a couple of cycles, maybe they've had, tier one races a couple cycles in a row. You can't assume that you can come in and change people's mind about that. They've already heard a bunch of arguments against them, right? They've already thrown everything at the wall to see what would stick. If you're going to do that for the fourth time in a row, a lot of folks are just going to tune it out because, they've been down that road before. They pick their horse and they're going to stick with it unless something really drastic changes.
Well, and I think one thing that really stood out, I mean, obviously I live in Kevin Schmidt's district. He was one of the highest overperformers in the state, right? Outperforming Trump by 6 points. I mean, that is massive. And I think a lot of that is attributed to his work ethic, but also his voting record, that he understands what his constituents want, what they want, and he votes that way.
Yep. That was one of the big things we harped on after the 2022 election, Michael, with our whole political team when we looked at that data. It was when you're looking to recruit a candidate, you're not necessarily looking for, somebody who's like just on paper, they've got a beautiful family and they're attractive and, they're a great communicator. All that's good. But really, when we look for candidates, especially after 22, when we learned this in the data, you're looking for people who have connections in the district, people who are known in the district. Kevin Schmidt, if I'm just going out in a generic district, I'm not picking Kevin Schmidt as like, look at this guy, he's a rock star. But he knows people in the community, so many people in the community. As you said, he works his butt off, but he's genuine, he's likable, and he knows what the people in his district want, which is different than what the people in another district might want. That's what you're looking for. Somebody who was on the JCs or owned a local business or was a local mayor or whatever it might be. People who actually know the people in their community, they're always going to overperform.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, and this is something I had an operative tell me, like, man, you don't want to run against a famous name in an area. Like if there's somebody owns a grain business or something like that, or it's next to impossible to beat those people.
Yeah. Another takeaway I had is just if you look at the landscape in 2026, it's clear. It's amazing how in 2024 the ball was mostly in the House's court, if you want to torture a sports metaphor, where there was very little for the Senate to be able to do in 2024. They did what they could, and we obviously have talked about that ad nauseum. But 2024, it was mostly races in the House. Now, when you look at 2026, there are so many races in the Senate, and obviously we'll talk about Don DeWitte's retirement, which happened just after we recorded the episode, so that we couldn't talk about it. But there are so many races in the Senate, and when we looked at the House data, the unfortunate reality is that many of the districts that are right on the edge of being in play worse in off years. I know, Mark, this is something you've talked about a lot. That's part of why we looked at the trend lines in the data. I wanted to see off years versus on years. Is there a trend of certain districts playing better or worse for us? And you're seeing sort of a perfect storm of, in the House, on the House side, some of those potential pickup opportunities are playing 3 or 4 points worse for us in off years. Which is just going to make it harder for the House to have pickups this time. And so, unfortunately, it looks like on the House side, we may have lost our best chance, at least between these two cycles, to get pickups. 26, listen, we got to fight. I think Suzanne Ness is vulnerable, especially if she vacates for the Senate. I think Murray Brule is absolutely vulnerable. So there's certainly potential pickup opportunities. But you're talking about just a couple. Our best pickup opportunities in the House were 24. 26 is going to be all in the Senate's court. I mean, John Curran is going to have, his work cut out for him, as will his staff, between holds and pickups. And there's just going to be a lot of action over in the Senate this time around.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you there. I think John Curran is going to be holds. If I'm John Curran, I'm holding. I don't think he has the money. I don't think he has the money to chase pickups. I really don't.
I mean, listen, from a money perspective, you're right. I mean, the data says that there are some potential pickups here we ought to be talking about and we should be targeting, but there's going to have to be a heck of a lot more fundraising from the Senate if that's going to be possible, because Curran's going to be, his own district's going to be super expensive. Obviously, Senate District 26 with Darby Hills, and now we got to figure out what's happening in 33 with DeWitte retiring. So, yeah, the holds are going to be, $5 million just right there. So, Mark, I'm agreeing with you in a very long-winded way.
one thing to pay attention to in the Senate is you have to keep an eye on what's going on with Harmon's campaign finance violations and seeing how much he's actually going to get fined, if he's going to get fined, because that's going to affect, at least short term, the amount of money that Harmon's going to be able to throw around. It might only affect the short term in terms of holding primaries. Depends on who get primaried on the Senate side of the Democrats, but in general, if Harmon's not working with the type of cash that he was previously, it is a slight advantage for the Senate Republicans to say, we're not going to be outspent 20 to 1. It's going to be 10, 15 to 1, but still, like, you're dealing with a little bit more of a better situation than you were previously.
I mean, listen, just to make sure we say it. I mean, there are two, according to the data, the two best pickup opportunities are on the Senate side. You've got two districts that will play closer to break even than you're going to see on the House side. Doris Turner in 48. That district's going to play like a D3 to a D4. That's doable. Mark Halpin in 36. He's made a really bad vote on transit. His district's going to play more like a D5 this time around. Those are absolutely doable. You compare that to on the House side, obviously, we're high on 66, but that's going to play more like a D6. 76, of course, we're very high on. It's going to play closer to a D5 this time around. So you look at the two Senate districts on paper, according to the data, are going to be just a hair more favorable than those House districts. Again, money is going to matter. If the House has money and the Senate doesn't, well, then that's going to dictate what's going to happen. All right, any other thoughts? We talked turnout. Obviously, we're looking at a presidential. I know, Mark, you're doing a lot of work in DuPage County where you saw vote by mail be a huge impact on the municipals and the consolidated races. So turnout's always a big deal. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we should have had a program all summer and we haven't had one. So these races that on paper look like D+3 or D+5 might be D+6, D+8. Be honest with you, because until Republicans embrace the permanent vote by mail, it's going to be tough.
Yeah. Well, and we got to remember, this being an off year, you're not going to see that Trump turnout. As we talked about some of these districts, the script's been flipped here with Republicans now doing worse in off years than better because the Trump supporters they're not reliable to come out for Republicans in an off year. So, a lot of this turnout's going to be a factor for sure in 2026.
Some of the most competitive places too. You see, you're going to have a competitive Senate race and maybe a pickup opportunity in the House. I mean, you get a lot of mileage out of, not just targeted campaign or candidate advertisements, but you get somebody to opt into permanent vote by mail in a district like that. That's two races you help with one mailer.
Yeah. I mean, think about House District 76 plus Senate District 33. I mean, that's got to be a huge focus for Republicans because you're doubling up right there. I don't know that sadly, I'd love for House District 51 to be in play, but the numbers don't say it is. But Marty McLaughlin in 52 is going to be a huge race for us. And then you got Senate District 26. So there's another hot spot where, every Republican you get out helps two races.
And
you got Amy Grant and Seth Lewis, right?
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. I missed that one just because I'm such a big fan of Seth Lewis's. I don't think he's as in at risk as other people might think, just because I've been in that district. They love themselves some Seth Lewis down there, but it is one of our big four holds. So you're absolutely right to call it out. All right, let's move on. That's a good discussion. Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. We had people from outside our group who put in some thoughts. Let's let them share their thoughts. So we had some thoughts from the Kane County, McHenry County region. Our buddy John Lopez, who's been on before, who is always a big fan of ours and gives his thoughts. He gave some thoughts about Kane County, about House District 66. He's of the belief, and we'll talk about Senate District 33 specifically later on in the episode, but he's of the belief that Suzanne Ness could move up and try to pursue that Senate seat. And he lives in that district, so he knows that district really well. He's aware of a bunch of local Democrats in House District 66 who could step up for that. And so he's feeling concerned about Kane County, especially with their performance the last few elections and how things don't look great in Kane. So he agreed with you, Michael, on Kane County being one of those districts that we should be really nervous about and our performance. But he also is nervous about Republicans in House District 66 and Senate District 33. Again, we'll talk more about DeWitte in a second, but just any general thoughts on that. I mean, Kane County, we talked about it. We were a little harsh, but the data doesn't look great in Kane County, and Republicans have been doing pretty poorly there the last 3 cycles. I'll be the bad guy there and just be the one who says that.
No, Kane's been a mess. You want somebody to agree with that? I've looked at the numbers there. Kane's been a mess. it's been a big mess too on the vote by mail. It's been as effective there as it's been in DuPage in terms of flipping everything around. So unless you get, and I think there's some inter-party squabbles in Kane where everybody doesn't necessarily row in the same direction. So unless you get everybody doing that and recognizing that it's a turnout model, you're going to have an issue. The other thing you're going to do is you're going to have an issue if somebody doesn't pay Chris's light bill so that we could see him better, because it looks like you're in a cave there, Chris.
Listen, Mark. The rain is officially came to Crestwood, and it's coming down cats and dogs right now. So the skies have darkened, and they have opened up in terms of the rain, and that's why it has gotten dark in the Chris layer.
You have to have at least a night light or something, right? Like clap on, clap off.
There's something.
What is this, 1996, Butler? Does anybody still have a clap on, clap off? The clapper?
I figured you might.
We have lights though. I'm not sure.
Let's see. We had another comment that came in. I don't know if these people gave our permission to use names. I didn't ask our producer, so I'm not going to use names other than John's, just because I love, he's fine. He doesn't care what I say about him. So I won't use names for the rest of these. But we had another person who said the problem is Illinois Republicans keep eating each other. We've talked about that ad nauseum, so I don't know that we have to get into it yet again. But this person isn't wrong. I mean, the more we continue to fight each other as Republicans, of course that's gonna hold us back. Of course, that's gonna show up in the data. So we've all talked about it. I don't know if anybody wants to touch on that comment, but someone shared that, and I figured I should share it as well. We also had the Dylan Vansel campaign jumped in and wanted to make sure we knew that we're going to win aisle 17 this cycle. I love the confidence. Curious if anybody has some thoughts. I mean, it's the one congressional district that looks at least within reason for us. That's what we as we talked about it, looking at the data.
Sorensen's getting primaried now by
Amy Brill's staffer. What the heck?
Yeah.
I mean, the question is, how's that going to play out? I mean, you got Amy is vulnerable in her district. Now she's got a staffer primarying, the congressperson. That's not going to play great.
Well,
that's a big Clown of the Week nomination right there. Yeah. You think she'd be trying to quash that?
I would think. I don't know. Even Democrats don't like Pritzker's like gov choice. Democrats don't like their congressperson in aisle 17. I mean, hey, this maybe we could use this to our favor. We had another person, Chris, from Will County, talk about how turnout wasn't great in the last consolidated. So using the general isn't a good example because ours don't early vote. Obviously, this is right up Batinick's what he was talking about. But Chris, I know you showed a lot of positivity towards Will County, but this comment was about how that didn't really carry over to the consolidated. Should that make us more concerned about 2026?
It should make you more concerned if you do nothing about it. That's my honest to goodness answer. Is that a lot of people have negative things to say about the 2026 cycle or future cycles. They lament the permanent vote by mail problem, but that's all it is lamenting. Okay, and your lamentations aren't really doing you any good if you don't actually pick up the ball and actually play the game. Okay, and that's the problem that a lot of Republicans find themselves into. Yeah, Republicans had a pretty good cycle in Will County in 2024, but they would have had a better one if they would have played the game. It's the same thing for 2025. They had a bad cycle, and it wouldn't have been as bad if they played the game. So 2026, Will County, you're right. Consolidated numbers were not good, but you got to think that if you commit to the fact that 2026 looks bad because Republicans don't vote by mail and Democrats do, well, then why are you watching the show? You seem to have already thrown in the towel.
Okay, all right, I like it. Showing a little heat. Chris is waking up. Last one I saw here is someone talking about, we kind of covered this a little bit a couple episodes ago, I think, on people really misunderstanding sort of Trump and MAGA. I know we had Chesney on, we had a little bit of a discussion on this with him, on, people who say that we need more candidates who can speak sort of that language, that Trump populism, maybe not necessarily people who are tying themselves directly to Trump or trying to be Trump, but speaking to what has made Trump popular, the fact that he's he's more populist, that he's, the made in America, the not your typical politician, the standing up for the working people. There's a brand there beyond Trumpism. That's something that has worked for him. And I don't know that Republicans have sort of figured that out. One of our commenters pointed that out.
Well, I think that's true in certain districts. I mean, when we were going through the numbers, there were people that were running as Republicans. They were on the ballot at the same time as Trump, and they underperformed him, right? So, there's something to that, but it's not, from top to bottom, we're not going to be able to take that approach everywhere. You have to be, okay, in this district it works, in this district it won't. Right? If you're underperforming Trump by 7 points in a congressional race, like that's a problem.
Yeah. Mark, you were trying to go in.
And so I think when people I have a different viewpoint on how you act like Trump. You don't change your personality to be Trump. Trump is a hold it. He's a TV reality show guy. Bill Big, he's been in the media for a long time. What makes Trump effective politically is his strong authenticity. And you can be authentic in a way that embraces some of the stuff that you guys are talking about, maybe even different things, where people just when they meet you, they believe you that you're actually going to go down there and fight for the things that you say, and you're not going to let anybody else get in the way. And he does that. He comes in like a bull in a china shop and does exactly what he says he's going to do. And people appreciate and respect that. And that's part of why they put up with some of the other stuff that maybe you wouldn't with the different candidate. You have way too many candidates that are poll tested, that are this way on an issue and then this way on an issue, and they try to make everybody happy, as opposed to just saying, yeah, guess what? I know you wanted me to vote this way. I voted against what you wanted me to do. Here's why I voted what you wanted me to do on this issue. Now let's move on to some other issues. I mean, I think too many people on both sides of the aisle, but particularly on our side, try to have it both ways too often instead of just trying to be straight up who they are and really laying it out there in kind of a bold, proud way.
I want to
authenticity is big. You're right.
I want to agree with both Michael and Mark, but I do want to add the stipulation that a lot of people consider what makes you like a Trumpian candidate just being as conservative as possible, and that's not necessarily the case at all. Trump has a lot of ill conservative, a conservative issues on stances on a number of issues.
We got Chris making up words.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't matter. But he's liberal on some issues comparatively to the rest of the Republican Party. But for some candidates, they're like, oh, I'm a MAGA conservative, and I'm going to tie myself to Trump, and I'm just going to talk about the most conservative issues there are, and Trump's winning my district. And it's like, well, dude, you basically took the wrong answer from what Trump actually is. Trump was a movement away from a lot of the standard conservative principles of the party, and you just reinforced them and were a little bit more verbose about it, and that's why you underperformed Trump by 6, or at least part of the reason. So I think that a lot of people need to get out of the mindset of like being Trump-like means being very conservative, which it really isn't.
Fair. All right, let's move on. We had a different topic to lead today, but something hit the news we absolutely have to talk about. And I'm going to start with this. We're going to say your name, Mackenzie Felmley. DCFS has been a giant failure under JB Pritzker, not only failing the children and the vulnerable that it's supposed to be serving, but failing all of us as taxpayers and people in Illinois, refusing to release reports as children are paying the price and as kids are dying. We're talking about 1,200 children under DCFS's care have died since the middle of 2018. Over 3,000 have been seriously injured. And here's just one story about this young girl, 18 years old. She died last year from a blood clot that hit her lungs. She'd found at the bottom of a set of stairs. She was dehydrated. She weighed just 90 pounds. Her neck, shoulders, legs, and face were bruised. She had been abused for 4 years under her mother and then her foster mother. DCFS came to the house regularly, including 2 days before she died, and did nothing. And here we are a year later. Capital News has reported over a year later, and we still don't have the report. It is required by law that these reports be done and made public. And over a year later, we still don't have the report on this. And thankfully, law enforcement is going after the foster mother in St. Clair County. That's where that's happening. But this is under Pritzker. DCFS has been an absolute failure. And this isn't political. This is human. These are young kids. These are our most vulnerable. Don't tell me you care about Illinoisans if you're not making DCFS your number one focus as the governor of this state. It's even people who support Pritzker counted as one of his top failures, and it's heartbreaking. I'm going to say her name again because you don't hear JB Pritzker saying it. Mackenzie Felmley. If this is not a lightning rod for change in Illinois, then I don't know what the hell we're doing. If this isn't a moment that Republicans say, you know what, fine, I'll get off my ass and go challenge JB Pritzker because someone needs to hold him accountable because kids are dying then we are wasting our time. Let's shut down the podcast. Let's all go do something else. This is, I'm not going to lie. I was crying this morning when I read this. This is absolutely heartbreaking as I look at my boy that this could happen 1,200 times during JB Pritzker's tenure or a few months before he took over. And he doesn't care. I could go on for forever, but this would be a 3-hour podcast. So I'll let other people jump in.
Well, this is in my backyard. And it's Erica Harris's state Senate district. I was with her probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, and she was talking to me about this. And, they're required to send, DCFS is required to send notice to state senators, state reps when incidents like this happen. She was never notified by them, which is not surprising considering there is no public report. And I talked to the police chief there in Fairview Heights as well. And obviously, they're looking into this. There's an investigation that's ongoing. So I probably have to be careful about exactly what I say, because I think I probably know more than what I'm actually supposed to. But it is a very bad situation. And there was a lot of failures by DCFS on this case specifically for, a 4-year period. I mean, it was one after another, abject failure. They really dropped the ball on this one, just like they have in multiple other cases throughout the state.
Remember, just over a year ago, we had an in-person episode with McHenry County State's Attorney, Pat Canale, who talked about the AJ Friend case and how DCFS just absolutely failed there. And these are just a couple stories of, again, 1,200. Like, we have a governor who during COVID said, if we could just save one life, let's shut down the economy and shut down our schools and make everybody stay home. One life. 1,200 kids, generally in low-income areas, generally a higher percentage of minorities, people that supposedly he claims that he cares about. 1,200, let alone 3,000 that were seriously wounded or injured. Like this, why is he not leading every press conference with this? Stop running for president and go solve what is a problem that's on fire.
What's more heartbreaking about these two is, it's not like nobody saw it coming, right? When you see these kinds of cases, it's not a one-time thing or, a person who wasn't on anybody's radar before. It's people who have had repeated, prolonged transfers in and out of the DCFS system, in custody, placed in different homes, multiple reports of abuse and neglect, multiple home visits. I mean, these case files must be, hundreds of pages long. Yet in each of those times, every one of those red flags, every one of those warning signs that come up, they're not taking the correct action. They're not actually getting the child to a safe place. They're not putting them with a safe caregiver. And that's what's so frustrating about this is, if it was a freak accident or if it was something that was never, nobody had any idea was happening, you can't solve everything, especially things you don't know about. These are cases we know about. These are cases where DCFS is hands-on with a child dozens of times. I mean, there's simply no excuse for why, when you've been given that many warnings, why you're not able to intervene and do something to move the child to safety.
Well, in a state where we can spend hundreds of millions on pork in lawmakers' districts, only Democrats, of course, where we can spend almost $3 billion on non-citizens, don't tell me we can't find the money to help our most vulnerable. Don't even start with that.
The thing is,
go ahead, Chris.
This could be a great political win for JB Pritzker if he fixed the situation. I mean, one of the oldest adages in politics is that good government is good politics. So if JB Pritzker recognized, there is a problem in the DCFS system, why don't I fix that problem, take credit for it, and then use it as a campaign tactic? Again, that might be a really kind of morbid way of looking at it.
Yeah, Chris, we're losing you but you're 100% right. I mean, this is, why wouldn't you address this, considering if you fix it, you could run for president on this. I mean, this is right up the Democratic primary playbook of taking care of our most vulnerable. So yeah, you're right, Chris. Mark, you were trying to get in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to use this as another opportunity to point out the fact that we rank 50th in racial economic equality. So we're last. 8 years of complete control of government has gotten us last place in that. And then obviously I wasn't personally involved in this, but I did have some personal situations with DCFS cases, and it was kind of shocking to see how things were handled. Sometimes because of laws or rules that are in place, It doesn't seem, they certainly seem to care more about reuniting children with their parents instead of protecting children, because I've had stories where children were pretty severely abused and then are sent back to their parents. And I,
Well, the
you
amazing thing, Mark, is when I talk to people who are good parents who have had to interact with DCFS, they're always saying like, DCFS is so coming after us, and we're good parents. Why are they coming after us? So it seems like it's just two extremes. Either they're going after the people they shouldn't, or they're not going after the people that they should be. I don't work there, and it's got to be one of the hardest jobs on the planet. My kid sister has worked in Missouri on very similar cases for years, and she shares stories of how heartbreaking this is and how hard that job is. So I'm not going to cast a stone, but someone needs to say, we can do better. I'm not going to pretend to have the answers, but I do know we can do better. All right, we'll get Chris back in here as his internet improves. In the meantime, I'm just going to issue this challenge to JB Pritzker because he seems to not want to talk about this topic. Chris was saying, why wouldn't you jump on this? At this point, running for president, it's too late. He can't make this a major topic because it just shows how badly he's failed for 7 years in this space. So, of course, he's not going to say it. And you even see some of his allies not even posting about this because they don't want to make it a topic either. Challenge to JB Pritzker, just say her name. Mackenzie Family, you want us to say the name of some people that is politically expedient for you. Why don't you say her name? This 18-year-old who deserves to still be alive today, who had all the potential in the world and isn't because DCFS failed. Say her name. I dare you. All right, with that, let's go to some more political stuff. Let's stick on JB Pritzker because he's a fun punching bag. So Governor Flip Flop has decided that suddenly gerrymandering is a bad thing. If you'll remember, this Governor JB Pritzker, when he ran for office, he promised all of us that he would veto any maps that were drawn politically, that were gerrymandered in any way. And then when he was in office, he reiterated that promise. But of course, after Democrats put forward the most gerrymandered map in the entire country, Pritzker very happily signed it because Governor Flip Flop will do anything for political power. But now when Trump and Texas are thinking about doing some gerrymandering to help Republicans, now he's coming out and calling it cheating and saying it's absolutely ridiculous. Republicans in the House, especially Leader McCombie, Rep. Ugasti, Rep. Spain, C.D. Davidsmeyer, there's a whole bunch that have come out with some pretty strong statements, and good on them because they should. JB Pritzker absolutely should be called out on this. Members of the media have done it. Patrick Thingston has been doing it for all week, and kudos to him. He's right, and he's been heated about this. This is absolute hypocrisy from JB Pritzker, further proving that he will say anything in politics. Curious what you guys think.
Well, didn't he even if I remember correctly, he wrote a check for like $50,000 to a group that was advocating for fair maps when he was running for office previously. I understand that like a $50,000 check from Pritzker is like a trip to Starbucks for us, but like, come on, like he just it's just when I saw that clip, he was asked by a reporter. Good job for I don't know remember who the reporter was, but that was a great question for them to ask because here we are, most gerrymandered, congressional districts in the country, and then here he is trying to act like he's opposed to that. It's absurd.
I think it's always interesting to think back to the context of what was going on when he made that pledge. This was during a crowded Democratic primary for governor. He certainly was bringing the most money into the ball game, but it was not a clear win for him. Right? He had legitimate alternatives. It was a fight. Everybody was sort of positioning themselves as a candidate, and it was in that context with Daniel Biss and Chris Kennedy and people who are trying to run and say, I'm pro-reform. I'm going to break the power that the political machine has over Democratic Party in the state of Illinois. And I think he felt in that context he had to say he was for reform as well. He had to be I'm the outside guy who's also for reform, and I am going to bring all this money to the table. And the reason I think that matters is because he's gotten off, in the last couple cycles, gotten away with not really having to make these kinds of pledges. He's been able to sort of punt some of these issues to the side. He hasn't really had to be clear about, yes, I support this, or no, I don't support that. But if he's, in this next election cycle here in Illinois, and as he starts to position himself for a presidential run, he'll have to make some of these decisions again. And I think it's the perfect time to come back and say, look, you'd love to avoid having to make these decisions, but you're a candidate, you're seeking votes from folks. Tell us how you stand on the issues, and tell us why we should believe you on this new pledge when you were more than happy to break the last one you made.
That's a fair point.
Well, I think it's very
Hold on, Mike.
easy.
Let's let Mark get in first.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know if everybody remembers. He just said that he would veto an unfair map, and he deemed that this was a fair map. So, he didn't
No,
necessarily.
he said he would veto a map that was drawn by legislators or their staffs or any. That was the thing, not fair.
I meant moving forward, but yeah, I'm being a little facetious. But the interesting thing about JB with this one is that I really think he's making a mistake in his run for president in that he's chasing. And I think you're going to start to see that reflected in some of the poll numbers. So I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on in LA? Sending the armed guard in there is bad. And then all of a sudden the riots don't kind of turn out. And oh my gosh, the Trump tax on poor people with the tariffs. And then the tariffs really don't, raise inflation. It just feels like he's always chasing like the issue of the day. And then it fizzles on him every time, and he's always chasing something new. And he doesn't have a really good record of standing for things over the past six plus months that have had any staying power. And he always seems to be changing his message. And I think this is probably his biggest mistake out of all of it, because it's his own words back that are coming back to hurt him. So.
Well, Mark, as our pollster on the podcast, I mean, I've seen it, you've seen it. He's barely registering in some polls. We just saw Michael. You and I saw some poll in the last week or so where he didn't even register. Yeah. He wasn't even in the list of Democratic candidates. So I think maybe he just feels desperate, like he has to chase it. But you're right, candidates without a brand, candidates without something that people could believe in. Like what does JB Pritzker stand for? What is?
Let me tell you what this is. This is what he's setting up. He's being inauthentic. That's exactly what he's setting up. He's chasing all these different things, and he's positioning himself for what he thinks the flavor of the day is, and that's not going to have any staying power. When you are Trump and have said for decades that you think the United States is getting screwed because people tariff us and we don't tariff them, and then you come and do it, that's authentic. He's missing it. He's missing it on maps. He's missing it on racial economic equity. He's missing it on a whole host of issues. It's going to be interesting to see what the Illinois legislature and he does on the ECCA. I think that's going to be a big, huge fight for him. And it's going to put him in a box a little bit. So he's not setting himself up for what his brand and authenticity is.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, it worked super great for Hillary Clinton. It worked super great for Kamala Harris. So why wouldn't he pursue that strategy? But the reality is, going back to when he called Rod Blagojevich and begged him for a job, JB Pritzker has only ever wanted one thing, which is to be important, to have power. That's it. So JB Pritzker has never stood for anything other than when can I get elected to something. So I guess this is what we should have expected out of Pritzker. All right, Chris, I'm glad to see you're back, because I know you're going to be really excited for this next topic, but we're going to move to the next one. Sorry, buddy, you missed this one.
We're back.
I know you're going to be excited about this next one, so let's talk about it. Since the last time we've done one of these podcasts, Susana Mendoza has announced that she will not be running for re-election as comptroller. Everyone assumes she'll be running for mayor. We don't really need to cover that right here because we're more focused on state stuff and 2026 versus 2027. But Chris has been saying for a bit now that Susana Mendoza is unlikely to run for comptroller. Here it is. We've got an open seat statewide. Chris, go ahead, take it away.
So again, I've been bringing this up for the past few months now, ever since she first indicated that she was potentially not going to run for re-election. And I know we're not going to don't want to get too much into the mayor's race, but I just want to say if she wants to run for mayor, this makes perfect sense for her, because as somebody who knocked on doors for another mayoral candidate in 2019 against Susana Mendoza, one of the things I said was, why are you voting for Susana Mendoza? She just got elected comptroller. She doesn't know what job she wants. So she realized that, I think, that maybe she heard that Chris Jackowiak was in the streets of Beverly telling people
famous, so yeah.
Yeah, I know. Now I'm world famous, apparently. But now it's a good move for her. And everyone knew she was running for mayor, so everybody knew this was a possibility. And the Democrats, to their credit, they seemed to be ready for it. You had 4 Democratic candidates for comptroller already announced that they're running for office. You already have one of them slated by the Cook County Democratic Party, State Representative Margaret Croak, and you have people jumping into her district right as soon as she announced she's running for comptroller. On the Republican side, crickets. Nothing. No. Nobody has a clue Nobody has. We still don't have a clue who's running for treasurer or secretary of state or attorney general. We don't got a clue for any of those.
Heck, even governor and lieutenant governor. Let's be real. We got nothing.
Right. But now we got a statewide constitutional office. The last one that Republicans held that was not governor. Okay, remember Judy Bartopinka gets elected, she dies, and Leslie Munger fills the seat. Okay, why was no Republican remotely thinking of the possibility this might happen? And it's about the morale in the party. I don't think anybody who is a worthy candidate thinks they have a shot. So I'm here on the podcast right now. I think we got two great candidates for comptroller on the podcast right now. And I think I'm, of course, talking about Collin and Michael, but
look at that.
But no,
fake them out.
We got two great candidates on the podcast right now. And I don't want to put them on the spot, but I just want to make it known that, like, we really need to find someone here, guys. If you're the Republican Party, the Democrats are already jumping in, and not a single, not even a who cares tier perennial candidates announced that they're running for comptroller. No, literally nobody has jumped on this office, and I think that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we should talk about top to bottom here. The lack of candidates. It's open season for that. I mean, the problem is, we've got a few names out there. Gasty said no, and certainly I respect that. We're going to need them, especially with 33, and so we're going to need them. So I get it, but you've still got Dabrowski toying with it, but hasn't announced. Looks like he's still trying to get his ducks in a row to decide if he's doing it. I don't know what Delmar's doing. He's a friend, but I have no idea what Delmar is doing. Now he's hedging his bets, talking about a statewide run. So I don't know if he's just waiting for someone to cut him a deal so he doesn't have to run for governor. I hear Don Tracy starting to make some calls saying, what if no one else is going to do it? Maybe I should do it. Like, guys, we need candidates, especially governor and especially comptroller. We need candidates because we've got these candidates at the county level, at the state level. If the top of the ticket is dragging them down, we're going to look back and regret it. We're going to look at in November and say that these state reps would have held on if we ran a good candidate for governor, a good candidate for comptroller. I mean, the two best candidates we've had in the last 6 years were Tom Demmer for treasurer and Leslie Munger for comptroller. We've talked about it, and so oftentimes we can do really well in those down ballot statewide races, let alone someone needs to hold JB Pritzker accountable. I ran about this, it seems like every week, but someone get off your ass.
Yeah, here's one of the big issues we have, and I would, you mentioned Patrick earlier. I've talked about this on his show, is that they're like, oh, there's no frontline people running for governor in these offices. I'm like, well, who are our frontline people? Number one. Number two, the typical spot you go to is a senator in an off year. Almost all of our senators happen to be up. That's really the big. There's nobody that can just take a flyer and put their name on the ballot and get some statewide name ID and still hold on to their office for Senate. That's really the issue that you have right now in terms of the next place that you go to. Any sitting state rep has to give up his seat to run. Most of the senators. So you have Terry Bryant, Lee Ariano, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. Jason Plummer, and that's about it. So the opportunity where you can pull from is pretty thin.
Yeah. Yeah, and listen, I get it. I'm a Politico. Like, I can math this thing. I understand why people are nervous about it, and I understand why our pool is as small as it is. But I mean, at a certain point, we got to put something together. I mean, we just. Not only do we need to hold Pritzker accountable, but as I said, I mean, we've got races up and down the ballot. We've got Senate holds, we've got House holds, we've got some pickups that you lose a couple points because at the top of the ticket, we're stuck with so-and-so. I mean, right now it's Mendrick or bust, and Mendrick has not proven that he can put together a winning campaign. I mean, if we're just going to say, fine, whatever, we'll run Mendrick and 5 no-names in the other statewides. We're hoping Richard Porter goes for Senate. Listen, I love Richard, but like, okay, then let's go.
What are you waiting for?
Let's go. I mean, and this is the thing that I've ranted about. And Mark and Tom, you guys are former candidates. You've done this. Here's what drives me crazy. If you want to run for office, you have to earn support. Like, you can't just say like, okay, I'll run if you back me. But we've seen that with Gasty, with respect, because I love him. We've seen that with Dabrowski. If I can get pledges for whatever, then I'll do it. Again, why is that where we're at? Like, if you think you could be a good governor, then go run and earn those donor support, earn the political endorsements. Like, go show us you can run a winning campaign and go earn that support. This idea that I have to be wined and dined and then maybe I'll do it. Like, I'm really sick of that. I mean, Illinois is the jewel of the Midwest. We are one of Chicago is one of the greatest cities in the world. Illinois is one of the greatest states in the country. You have an opportunity to run statewide in a state like Illinois. We shouldn't have to beg you to do it. And when we see how much JB Pritzker has failed, I shouldn't have to be begging week after week for somebody to hold the dude accountable.
All right, we can sign you up, Collin.
Yeah, I feel you on that. I think I think there's kind of a couple of things in that though. One is you certainly shouldn't have to be wined and dined, but I also know, folks will make a couple of phone calls sometimes. They'll test the waters a little bit, just sort of see what reaction they're going to get. And sometimes, it's hard to even get somebody to pick up the phone. It's hard to get somebody to figure out why they should care about a race like that. And you're right, you got to go out there and sell it. You got to be aggressive about it. But I think there is this feeling of like, oh my gosh, am I going to walk out onto this plank and turn around and there's going to be nobody else there standing with me, right? I'm going to be left out of my own. I'm going to have to be running this, reactive shoestring kind of campaign. It goes to a larger picture of what does the Republican Party look like in Illinois? To what extent do we have people who are going to be able to help you, make some inroads in different communities, different parts of the state? It's really challenging, and I do think that probably folks who are knocking on the door of some of these things right now, they're not getting kind of any response. Might be getting a very cold response, and they think, I can't pull the trigger right now. This is not an environment where I feel like if I take a risk, there's gonna be anybody there who's got my back.
Yeah, I mean, someone was going to be on an island that they do this. I mean, I'll be real. I want someone to step up, but you're going to be on an island. There's the Republican infrastructure in the state is awful. Like it doesn't exist. There's not a lot of donors out there. The business community just right now is not playing. And one day, hopefully they'll come back, but right now they're not playing. Yeah, someone's going to have to take a risk here and step out. And yeah, it's going to be lonely for a while, or maybe all the way through election day. But again, you hear that heartbreaking story about DCFS. At a certain point, someone's got to say, I'll do it. I'll fight for the kids, or I'll fight for the taxpayers, or the millions, the thousands or hundreds of thousands of people who have left Illinois. Like at a certain point, someone's going to be like, okay, yeah, this is going to suck, but I'll do it.
And I think that's a good point. Mark and I have talked a little bit about this, about, having a candidate who maybe can pick just one or two or three key issues and say, look, my campaign is all about these things. And, the idea there is motivate somebody who feels strongly enough about a specific set of issues instead of, sometimes on races like this too, you can feel like, to Mark's earlier point, like you're just going to chase a bunch of stories. You're going to have to be very reactive to everything. You're not in control of what your message is. That's a really hard and frankly unsuccessful type of campaign to run. But maybe you do have somebody who says, I'm going to fight on DCFS reform, property tax relief, right? I mean, I'm going to be a crusader on an issue or two. And even if I come up short, at least I'll have advanced a cause that I really believe in.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just come with some broad policy agenda like a standard Republican, low taxes and the economy's bad. And basically, like, I mean, I don't mean to call them out, but like the wire points, talking points, like they're right on a lot of that. But a standard Republican who rolls out that agenda with limited funding, it's not going anywhere. So someone who can speak specifically to a key issue that will get attention, like DCFS, like there's someone who can get some play even with limited funding. But you just come out with your standard Republican talking points, you go lose by 10 points, you get demolished by Pritzker's millions, and we all move on to 2028. That's how that plays. On the Comptroller's race, just going back to Chris, I mean, you look at who the Democrats are lining up for here. Clearly, they had Margaret Croak ready to go. They had her lined up, ready to go for this. I mean, I know Holly Kim. She's an outsider sort of Democrat. I never expected her to get sort of Democrat support, but she's a unique player in the Democratic Party. If Pritzker's going to get behind Croak, I don't know how Holly Kim will do or some of these others. But there's some interesting choices on the Democratic side. But it looks like Democrats are looking to just coronate Margaret Croak at this point, which is another white Chicago candidate.
Yeah, and Harmon and Preckwinkle both kind of pushed back on this idea at the Cook County slating last week, trying to basically say, we really need a Hispanic on this ticket, guys. We don't have any Hispanic statewide office holders. Maybe
or Asian or something.
Yeah, or some other. And listen, I actually fundamentally agree with that, despite the fact that I think Margaret Croak is a pretty good candidate for this position. The two former state representatives may disagree with me on this topic. They may agree with me on this topic. I'm not exactly sure. But I think Margaret Croak is a fine candidate. But the Democratic Party is continuing to run into the fence here of like, we're just running more white people from Chicago. We're just running more white people from Chicago. And that's great when you want to win votes of white people from Chicagoland area, but when you continuously lose Black and Hispanic and Asian votes with every passing cycle, you think you would have to throw those communities a bone every once in a while. Comptroller might have been the race to do it. There's still time, of course, but right now Croak's got all the momentum.
Yeah, I mean, listen, she's you can already tell she's trying to run like Mendoza. I'm fiscally conservative, I'm more moderate, but people got to remember she's got a record, and that record isn't as moderate as she claims. She was on the board of Pritzker's abortion group. She's got votes that were not and are not as moderate as she claims. She's not this Mendoza type candidate. She's certainly going to have her challenges. If she's the nominee, she's absolutely beatable if somebody can hold her accountable for her record.
Any of these candidates are beatable. Beatable is a strong word here, folks, but any of these candidates are vulnerable enough to where if you put a fiscally responsible Republican candidate who knows the issues of the comptroller's office, or is at least willing to learn the issues of the comptroller's office, and run a full campaign, you can get yourself to a point where the Republican Party is, if it's not winning, it's doing fairly well. You can look at the results on election night and say, wow, so-and-so got, 47% of the vote against Margaret Croak. How did that happen? And you'd say, well, they ran a good campaign. They talked about the issues, and they brought to light a lot of things that were going on in the state's finances. Right now, it looks like it's going to be like Jimmy Lee Tillman or something at this point. Who knows? Listen, Chris Jackowiak jumping in this race today, saying he's running for comptroller, despite I know nothing about the office. I know nothing about accounting or finance whatsoever. If I jumped into the race, I would be the front runner for the nomination, the Republican nomination.
That's how bad it is.
That should scare the living crap out of every person running, is that I, announcing today, hypothetically, would be the front runner for the nomination.
And Chris, I'd be your first donation. I'd give you a full $10, man.
That's more than I'm getting in my salary these days, eh?
All right, let's go to our next topic here. Let's talk about this. We're talking about districts where people aren't running, and sadly, Republicans have a retirement of our own. Don DeWitte, who's been on the podcast, who personally I've just been a fan of for a long time. He's retiring. He's not running again in 33. Republicans are losing a real good one. And this is going to hurt. He's going to fill out his term. This one's going to hurt. Not only does it hurt us in Springfield because he's one of our best, but now a district in 33 where with him on the ballot, it was much more winnable. We did the math. With him, it was going to play like an R3. Without him, it's going to play like a D3. And so it's a huge change now. And suddenly, as Mark said earlier in the podcast, Republicans are now going to spend even more money on our 4 big hold districts. So this is a big loss for Republicans. And I guess I'll say this before I close down my comments. Just thank you to Don DeWitte for your service. I mean, it seems like the best ones that we get, no disrespect to our current guests, but some of the best people we get in Springfield were former local leaders. They were mayors. I mean, DeWitte was the mayor of St. Charles. I mean, I've always said the Republican leadership works locally. Center-right leadership works locally. We've seen it. And that's a path forward for the Republican Party statewide if we can find more people like local leaders like Don DeWitte. So thank you, Don, for your service. Now let's talk some politics. I mean, what does this do to 33? Does Suzanne Ness move up from 66? Does this maybe help or hurt us in 66? What do you guys think?
I think maybe Don DeWitte should run for comptroller.
There you go.
But yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what Suzanne Ness does. It oftentimes it seems like the Dems certainly have the money, and I'm sure Harman can promise her a boatload of money to run for the Senate seat. And in the end, it might end up being we pick up a House seat and lose a Senate seat. But it's going to be another. I would not want to be John Curran this cycle. He is probably faced with one of the most difficult tasks a Senate Republican leader has faced electorally, at least in my political time. Having everybody up at the same time with all these 50-50 districts, when you toss in the vote by mail and not having the White House, which historically isn't good for the incumbent party, it's gonna be difficult, and this just adds to it.
And Mark, just to your point about Harman, I've got several reports of different candidates who've been being recruited by the Senate Democrats to run for certain seats, and they've been told you don't need to worry about money. We got you covered. We'll pay for 100% for the whole thing. I mean, they're actively saying that, so you're not wrong, Mark.
Well, and here's an example. I mean, the Senate Republicans pulled out of that Phil Nagel Joyce race, right? They pulled out of that race in end of September. The Democrats spent like $3-4 million in network TV ads all of October just to bury the guy.
Yeah.
So, and you look at the money that Harman spent trying to save the primary seat where they had the three-way primary with the CTO. I don't remember all the candidates. I know Nyack was one of them. I can't remember who the incumbent that was appointed.
Everyone remembers Dave Nyack. No one remembers the other two.
So, but the point is, and some people thought Harman was stupid for spending that money, and I think I might have even said it on the show. I thought it was brilliant because
you did say it.
People realize that Harman backs his team. There is not going to be if I was a Democrat looking to run for office, I would know that my Senate leader as a Democrat is going to be there and spend whatever it takes to win the race. So the money's going to be there for Ness. If she does choose to jump up, and either way, that's going to be a difficult hold seat for us up there. I mean, the suburbs are going to be ground zero for Republicans this next cycle for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing is that Ness doesn't actually overperform. I was talking to some of my local friends out there about this, that she's one of the incumbents that actually doesn't overperform, which is why 66 should be in play for us, even if she stays, because she doesn't overperform. But she is still an incumbent. So to our earlier conversation, she's not a great performing incumbent, but she is an incumbent. So if she gets out of 66, that does create an opportunity for us. I mean, let's talk Ugasti. He said no to the statewide run, so maybe he doesn't want to give up what's an easy hold for us in 65, but he does overperform. I mean, he was one of our best performers last time around. We talked about it. I got to look up what was his. He was our third best performer in 2024 because he overperforms. He beat Trump by 10 points in his district. If Ugasti were to run for Senate District 33, that would give Republicans at least a little bit of a sigh of relief because he does overperform, and his seat wouldn't be in play. I mean, it's yes, we'd have to spend a little bit of money to make sure we hold on to it, but that's still a Republican district. So the best scenario for Republicans would be Ugasti running for the Senate seat, but he already said no to Gov, so I don't know where he's at, and I certainly haven't had a chance to ask him.
I mean,
I can tell you, he's not running for the Senate seat. I already had the conversation.
There you go. See, that's why you're here, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, no, he's not running for Senate. And him and DeWitte are roommates, so I think they would have had this a little better coordinated
true.
If he was planning on running.
True. Michael, go ahead.
Mark took all the wind out of my sails.
All right, there you go.
I had a little glimmer of hope here, and then Mark's
breaking news.
Nope.
Breaking news.
All right, let's carry on to our next topic here. So obviously we've talked about transit a lot on this podcast. It's going to continue to be a big topic all the way through, I believe, January, but some people think maybe not. But either way, the transit bailout of the CTA, of Brandon Johnson's CTA, is back in the news because the realtors are spending big bucks. They're sending out text messages. I got them. I know a number of other people have gotten them. They're sending out mail. We got one at the household. I'll have Lane bring these up on screen and post for people if you'd like to see them. But the realtors are spending about $500,000 because one of the provisions, which by the way, we were one of the few people to talk about this on this podcast. Everyone focused on the delivery tax, which is awful. Everyone focused on maybe the sales tax, which would be awful. But one of the provisions here that we keyed on was the tax that the realtors are against because it's that property transfer tax, which we covered on this podcast on how much more it would cost people to sell or buy a house in the suburbs. It's a killer. And so for good reason, realtors are coming out hard against this with some really good messaging, some really good I think this is going to be super impactful, the campaign they're running here. So transit remains in the news, and now you got the realtors coming in with $500,000 playing ball on this. So curious if you guys got any thoughts on this.
I think it's very smart from them to get out in front of this thing right now. I mean, this
instead of waiting to the last second, which is what most of these groups do.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you're looking right now. They've backed themselves into a little bit of a corner by using some of the least noticeable tax increases in the operating budget to try to plug some holes for the state's general revenue fund. Now you're left with some of the things that people just didn't really want to touch in the spring legislative session. You've got to try to make your association's proposal the most radioactive thing in the state right now. You want, if that menu is going to be out there, people are listing which is the one that's going to draw me the most heat from back home. You want to make sure you're playing in that list.
Tom, this is because we want people to learn that are watching this podcast. So I want to ask you to expand on that, because we talk to these associations all the time and we tell them this is how you're supposed to play the game, because that's how legislators think, just like how you just shared, is they're going to put a bunch of things out and then whichever ones are the least radioactive, they'll go towards those ones. So you can't wait until veto session starts and you're down there and like, okay, now we're going to fight it. You got to fight now, because they're watching right now to see which one of these proposals will be the least painful for them to pursue. And yet all the time when I'm talking to these associations, they're not willing to go play the game right now, which is why I give huge props to the realtors, because this is what you're supposed to do. The business community ought to be taking notes. This is how you play the game, because what you just said, Tom, is huge. I don't think a lot of our audience realizes that this is how Democrats down in Springfield play this game, right?
It's absolutely right. I mean, everybody has a list of, here are the things that people have come to me. CTU always puts out, oh, we can raise $5 billion if we do these, this list of things. Everybody always comes with that. And in fact, sometimes these groups will throw each other under the bus and they'll say, don't do my $100 million idea. I've got another one that you can substitute for them. And it's somebody else's problem who's got to deal with that. But it absolutely is about, which one has the momentum of running against it. Which one do you feel like is going to be, your hair is going to be on fire if you end up voting for this? Now, to the little defense of some of the business community here, some of these tax increases we've seen in the recent years for the business community are extremely complicated. Yep. They're totally in the weeds. It's impossible to explain them to people, much less get people to contact their legislators about them. And so you're also kind of thinking a little bit about, who's the audience for this? How easily mobilized are they? You saw some of these things when we've had proposals previously about like the streaming tax, right? Mm-hmm. These things where Netflix is sending out to every one of their members, vote no on this kind of thing. It's very easy to mobilize an audience like that. So you've got to think about that. How understandable is it to the average voter? Is there a built-in network that can oppose this kind of tax? And then I want to get out there and drum on that. That's where the realtors, I think, have done well, because, what are they going to target? Everybody who lives in a home. I mean, that's a big audience, right?
Yeah. You're 100% right, Tom. I'll simply say this. It's a messaging problem that right of center we seem to always have. I mean, the real estate transfer tax is a little bit complicated itself, and yet that didn't stop them. So you're right. It is an impediment, especially to the business community, which is why what we're always saying is let's get better at that messaging. Because can you sell, tell me like a real estate transfer tax? Like, does anybody, no one knows what the hell that is.
It's a tax every time you buy or sell a house, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and they made it simple.
That,
like,
right?
and that's what we got to get better at, because you're right. It is an impediment, especially to the business community. This isn't what they do on a daily basis, which is why we all got to get better at helping them. Like, okay, yeah, you got this really complicated whatever. Here's a simple way to sell it. Let's get out there and let's sell it. So we both got to get better at it on the political side and of course on the advocacy side.
Well, yeah, they move very fast and they find these obscure things like Tom was saying, where it's like, we're going to do a 5% tax over here on this one thing that only impacts this percentage of the population, because they feel like, well, if I only piss off, 100,000 people, then maybe I won't be in jeopardy in my election. But if I piss off the whole state with the income tax increase or something, then I might have a problem.
Yeah, it's a fair point. All right, we are all political people at heart, so we're going to quickly cover this topic. We've kind of hinted at it before, but we got to talk about it, especially from a regional perspective, because in Illinois, if you look at the slated Democratic candidates, whether they're the incumbents or the ones that are clearly being pushed, like Margaret Croak for Comptroller, they're all Chicago. They also have, as Chris brought up, there's some lack of racial balance, but I don't think we Republicans, we've got 5 white dudes on this podcast, so we can't really throw a stone at that. But what we can certainly throw a stone at is the lack of regional representation. The Democratic Party in Illinois has become more and more just simply the Chicago Democratic Party, not the Illinois Democratic Party. It's happened a little bit every cycle, and now you see that they've got basically 6 candidates for statewide offices, and then if you count Senate, it's all 7. They're all Chicago. And there's no representation from throughout the state. Listen, look at our podcast. You've got Chris from the south suburbs. I'm from the northwest. You've got Mark, you're southwest, we could probably say. Tom Demmer, you're up northwest Illinois. Butler's in southern Illinois. Like, the Illinois Republican Party, for all of our faults, at least has regional representation. We're not all stuck in one spot. But more and more, the Democratic Party is just Chicago. And I think this is a huge opening for us because not only is the rest of Illinois, whether it's Western, Central, Southern, constantly screwed by Chicago, but you never hear this. The suburbs are the most screwed by Chicago and by the Democrats who are in power. If you look at the tax dollars that are sent down to Springfield, it's the suburbs that are screwed over and over. And look at the transit bailout. They're coming to the suburbs mostly to fund the bailout to the CTA. And so it's not just having representation in Southern but I want to see suburban representation in our government. And we don't see that from the Democratic Party. I think this is something we could absolutely use to our favor. Of course, we have to use it to our favor, and Chris will come in and say the Republican Party will screw this up, and he's not wrong. But before Chris throws his shade, his thunderclouds, I feel like this is an opening for Republicans to have some regional representation instead of this just being the state of Chicago.
I'll go ahead and jump in first. There was the rep from the Macomb area, Western Illinois. They used to call it Forgotonia.
Yep.
Right. That the Western Illinois. And it's funny that you put this on the schedule because I was thinking about it yesterday or the day before. It is literally like everything but Chicago's Forgotonia. I mean, even when they're passing regulations about who can work on a commercial roof and all these sorts of things, they always seem to be doing it from a Chicago-centric mindset, not thinking about how some of these silly regulations, they might make sense in Chicago, but they certainly don't make sense downstate. And it's certainly something that the Republicans should try to explain a little bit more. But you've nailed it too. Chicago, we pay for everything. No, they don't. Chicago or Cook County is like a dollar for dollar. I think DuPage, it's like 35 cents they get back on the dollar. Will County's about 50 cents on the dollar. It's the suburbs that carry the weight for the state of Illinois. It is not Cook County.
Yeah, well, and Butler gets all the money.
What's that, Chris?
Butler's people get all the money downstate, right? They get like $2 for every dollar they get.
I was just going to say this is kind of an unintended consequence of all the success that we have had as Republicans in Central and Southern Illinois, because you used to have, Democrat state reps and Democrat state senators that represented, Central Illinois, Southern Illinois, that at least the Democrats from Chicago could hey, what do you think about this? Oh, no, this is bad. Don't do it. That's all gone. They're not, they don't have the Costellos and the Phelps and the Andy Menars and the, those people.
The Lipinskis, as Chris would say. Michael, I mean, you're right. The only ones they have
here, so it's not an apple.
Your suburban Democratic representation are the Rachel Venturas, the Ann Stavra Murrays, the Nabila Saids, the Amy Murabriels, who are super progressive. There's very few moderate Democrats left in this party. That's absolutely true.
And there wouldn't be any downstate Democrats without very aggressive gerrymandering.
True.
Right? I mean, the only reason the Brielle district.
I mean, go to the federal level. I mean, Baczynski's district. I mean, that's a travesty. It's the only reason why there's a Democrat representing that region. Yeah. So this is an opening for Republicans. Please take advantage of it, please. We've polled it, and Mark, I'm curious, maybe you guys have polled it too. We've polled this to sort of using Chicago as a message, and you see it play really well outside the suburbs, which is 96 counties where using Chicago as a foil works really well. But even in the collar counties, using it wisely. You can't just say Chicago's bad, because that's not going to play. But using it in specific situations, I think I've yet to see a Republican or a Democrat, but a Republican in the suburbs run on that platform specifically on we're going to represent the suburbs. And here's how the suburbs are getting screwed. I would love for that to be a plank of the Republican Party in Illinois on here's what we're going to do to finally give the suburbs some representation down in Springfield. I'd love to see that.
And with actually have a perfect opportunity for that.
Yeah.
The transit is going to be a great, Brandon Johnson's out there saying 85% of riders of the CTA are from the city of Chicago.
Then fund 85% of it, dude. Go for it.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's a great issue to really play that contrast on.
Yeah.
The last remap back in 2012, where they drew those districts, that's the first time when they went from the city and drew those things into Will County and all the way down into Kankakee County. I had pushed the idea, and we got a lot of traction, but I couldn't get everybody to really sustain it and stay on board with the messaging. We didn't call ourselves Will County; we call ourselves Will Colony. That we were a colony of Cook County in Chicago, and when you look at our tax dollars going to bail out the CTA pension program like it did over a decade ago, here they are coming again for more suburban money for it. Here we are with the districts being gerrymandered, where you have to drive into the city or Cook County. Some farmer has to drive into Chicago to see his congressperson. That stuff is silly. We're treated like a colony. We're treated like second-class citizens. They take our resources and they spend them on themselves.
100%. Yeah, I like that. Chris, you get the final word, then we'll move on.
All right, so first one, point of clarification. I think Mike Ferris is from Vermilion County, so you're not exactly accurate here, unless he moved to Chicago at some point. He did?
He moved.
Okay. When did
he moved to Chicago. Matter.
Wow, this is incredible stuff here. Anyway, so there's that point of clarification out of the way. To the point on Republicans pushing the suburban representation angle, I think that works in theory, but suburban voters have basically said that they're not really interested in voting for the Republican Party, at least the suburban voters, which you consider to be suburban voters, Collin. So I think if you went to a place like, I don't know, Wheaton, you go to Wheaton or Naperville and say, I'm with the Republican Party. I'm standing up for suburban rights. And that person says, how do you feel about trans kids? And then it's like, oh, that's what you're dealing with the suburbs, people. So listen, I like the idea, but I think it misunderstands where suburban voters are going in terms of what their political preference.
Chris, number one, you're just Google it. Ferrix moved in 2023 to Chicago, so pay attention, buddy. But number two, listen, if we're going to ever take back the suburbs, well, you're not wrong. We need to start to take back the suburbs, which means we need issues we can use. Because yes, when they say, well, how do you feel about trans kids? We're not going to do well in Naperville. We're not going to do well in Highland Park. You're right. The point is we need to start to push back and find issues we can win on. And that's the point here, is this is an issue we could start to win on. Let's start to use it. All right, let's go to our news you can use section. And the whole point of this is quick hits, move through it. We're running out of time, but we want to equip you, our audience, with things you should be aware of. With that said, though, this first topic, if I don't give Batinick a chance to talk about this first topic, he probably will never be dumb enough to join my podcast again. So let me give this and let Mark kind of give us more of the details. But there's a very few people have been talking about this. It's finally starting to hit the news a little bit. There was a pension sweetener for Chicago that was tucked in a little bit, that was ignored a little bit down in Springfield. It's finally starting to see the light of day. The Tribune's been talking about it. I know Austin Berg, you guys at IPI have been talking about it. Even Illini Jen on Twitter, give you a shout out. She's been talking about it. There's a massive sweetener in here in Chicago that will cost Chicago taxpayers a ton of money on pensions. Mark, do you want to say that better than I ever could?
Yeah, well, I mean, you said it pretty well. One of the things that I actually caution on some of this stuff is you can have fun fudging the numbers a little bit. And to get to the $11 billion number, you have to count some of the compound interest that you would have and pay out over time on this. It's really a net present value. Look, this is back in napkins, so don't take this as gospel, but it's more of a $1.25 billion net present value. Like if you had that money to put in there now, that's what the cost is. The problem is you don't. So you're going to pay 7% interest on it, and you're going to borrow, and it's going to be like a house mortgage. But it's. I was actually talking to somebody about this very specific issue, and it was a Republican who voted for it. His attitude was like, they gave the teachers union all this money. They blow all this money with the tip money. They blow all this money with the, you name it. This is the one spot they actually do support, giving firefighters and cops in Chicago maybe a little bit better pension. But it's because they're in such a difficult fiscal situation that you have this. This should actually be relatively easy for a world-class city to pay for, but it's not because of all the other dumb things. So
it's context,
I think it was
right?
unanimous in the House. I think it was unanimous in the House.
Supporting police and fire, like I think all of us are on board with that. It's within the context of, can Chicago afford it? That's the conversation, right?
Right, and I think that was one of the issues. Susana Mendoza came out kind of pushing against this. Well, I think that was an unforced error for her because she didn't even need to talk about it, right?
Interesting.
Winning a primary in the city of Chicago with that, not having police and fire by your side, and you're running against an Alexi Giannoulias. I think she made her life a little bit difficult. So, these are the things we can't afford to do because we make bad decisions.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'd love to be in a world where we could absolutely take care of our policemen, our firemen. They deserve it 100%. Let's get to that point. But right now, with the Democratic mismanagement of Chicago and of Illinois, we can't afford to pay our bills. We can't afford to fix DCFS. That's the reality we live in right now. All right, let's go to the next one here. Let's stick on Chicago for a while. Let's beat up on them just to make Chris cry a little bit. There's a story that the Sun-Times ran that we've been watching for a while. We've actually talked about it on the podcast before, where the city of Chicago refused to pay $14 million for police overtime back in, I don't even know what year this was. Someone could correct me. It was about 5 years ago, I think, but don't quote me on that. Maybe 10. But at this point, because they haven't paid it, it's going to be at least 200 million. Some people are saying it's going to be more like 300 to 450 million. Like, this is just so Chicago. So Democrat run Chicago. Let's not pay 14 million today. And then now suddenly taxpayers are on the hook for $500 million.
Yeah, this is wild. I mean, this is a total classic Chicago case. This is like selling the parking meters and, and then looking at the value of that over a long period of time. I mean, these sorts of things where they let the problem fester until it's so bad that the thing explodes is just classic. And it's also, I mean, what a great illustration that we're saying, well, it's going to be like 300 or 400 or 500 million dollars. We're not really sure. I mean, these hundreds of millions of dollars are
Right?
just sort of like stab in the dark on some of these
Yeah.
things. I mean, if you can't keep track of people who work for you, how many hours they worked and what they have to pay them, I mean, that's sort of like the price of entry on running an organization. That's
Do any of the businesses in your association operate that way, or are they just out of business?
I don't think anybody's saying it's a couple $100 million this way or that. We're not sure.
Yeah, who knows? It's just money. Don't worry about it. Yeah. All right, let's stick on Chicago. Many of us have predicted this, and here we are. CPS, the Chicago Public Schools, are laying off another 1,500 employees after a couple weeks ago they laid off a couple hundred more. This is the mentality of the left. We said this when CTU was looking for their raises. It's more and more raises for fewer and fewer people. It's this idea that we're just going to take care of a small group of people, and now 1,500 people are out of work, but that's okay because we got our raises. Our small group here got our raises. It's this mentality of scarcity, of less and less, but let's just take care of our small group versus maybe passing policies or leading the city or the state in the way that helps all residents. But 1,500 more people are out of work, and this includes teachers. This wasn't just traffic guards this time. This was 500 teachers, 432. This was special education teachers. I mean, this is going to have a big impact on educating students and educating kids. But hey, CTU got their pay raises for everybody else, so they're fine.
Wrapping up the Chicago portion of this, I believe it's going to take some really drastic measures to drag the city of Chicago out of the hole that's being dug right now. And this is just, frankly, the beginning of where the problems are going to be. You're looking at an even worse budget situation next year. It's going to be worse again the year after that, going into the mayoral election. Something is going to have to change in the city of Chicago sooner rather than later, and it's not going to look like anything you've seen in the city of Chicago. You're gonna be amazed at some of the things coming out of Democratic committee committee people's mouths about austerity and cutting spending and things like that within the next few years. It's going to be incredible.
Let's go to the next one here. JB Pritzker has decided that Illinois employer State Farm is an enemy that we need to attack. So while insurance rates are going up around the country, and State Farm announced that, yes, their insurance rates would be going up on Illinois homeowners here, and certainly none of us are happy about that. We've talked about it in the past in the podcast. Pritzker's his response, because he's the least unless you're one of his chosen businesses, he's one of the least pro-businesses governors in the country. He went after State Farm. He attacked them and said that we're paying because of Texas, which was a lie, and they set him straight. And I'm going to just let Lou Sandoval carry the ball here, the president of the Illinois Chamber. I think maybe CEO. I don't want to get his title wrong. He said there are far more productive ways to address this than to attack a major job creator and a contributor to the economy in the state of Illinois. He's 100% right.
I guess Pritzker doesn't realize that some of this increase in costs might be his fault based on some of the bills that he signed.
Hey, but listen, Pritzker can go Pritzker can do his press conferences and celebrate his 50 jobs here that he brought to the state, or his 12 jobs over there that he brought to the state. Meanwhile, State Farm employs over 2,000 people in Illinois. But hey, let's just bash them publicly. That seems like a really smart strategy for showing that we support our businesses in this state. All right, let's go to the next one. Oh, go ahead.
It was just disappointing. He's smart enough to know better, or he's too dumb to be governor. He knows better. They're separate pools of money. And to do that to one of the largest employers in the state, that doesn't only send a signal to State Farm, who has decided to grow another headquarters, I think, in Texas. That sends not just a signal to State Farm, but it sends a signal to other businesses in the state.
100%. Next one here, same deal. So one of JB Pritzker's favored businesses, so they get all sorts of benefits as Rivian. So they're on a 30-year incentive deal that totals almost $1 billion, and it's come out. The Center Square, kudos to them, have broken that between 2022 and 2024, Rivian filed over 2,000 H-1B and 400 green card applications, which has led to a lot of questions. If Illinois taxpayers are paying this much money to support Rivian in this state, why are they bringing in workers from outside, not even of Illinois, but outside the country? Are Illinois taxpayers funding jobs going to non-Illinoisans, let alone non-even Americans? It's a pretty solid question when you see thousands of these applications that they're putting through, and yet they're enjoying almost $1 billion in incentives from Illinois taxpayers. Somebody should be looking a heck of a lot more into this.
Whoa, Collin. You're not sounding very conservative. One of the guests who's been on this podcast before, who's not on right now, of course, has said that, you got to hire foreign workers because, American workers, they won't work for the same wages as foreign workers. And that's a Republican ideal, Collin. That's a Democratic
not in today's
idea
Republican Party, but I love your
I don't know, Collin. This person seems to think that today's Republican Party is a very Democratic party.
Hey, Mitt Romney's not our president. Last time I checked.
Whoa, Butler, are you not a supporter?
All right, Chris,
of the true
you're having fun, but we got to move on. We're
Republican
running up against a hard deadline, so I'm going to move us. But thanks for bringing some fun to this. This was an interesting story from CWB Chicago. Nobody picked it up, of course. But Jaden Perkins, his mother came out and said, "JB Pritzker, stop using my son's name while you fight me in court." You've seen this over and over, where Pritzker, when it comes to the PRB, Prisoner Review Board, where he's used Jaden Perkins' name and as of other Democrats as their sort of excuse why they want to pass their non-reforms, essentially, for PRB. And she came out and said, "Wait a second, you're fighting me in court. Why are you using my name and my kid's name? I didn't give you permission." And the reason why I want to bring this up is because it wasn't that long ago that Pritzker and the Democrats and their allies in the media and on the Democratic blogs were saying, how dare a national Republican come into Springfield and use somebody's name for their agenda without their permission? And here we go. This mother, Jaden Perkins' mother, saying, stop using my kid's name for political gain. Yet again, Democrats, it's good if they do it, like gerrymandering. It's just not okay if Republicans do it. All right, for time, I'll keep us going. We've talked in the past, actually in May, during the podcast, we talked about how the state was covering up sexual abuse of minors in juvenile detention centers. Well, just a quick update. It's now been reported by the Sun-Times that the number of children who are claiming abuse at Illinois youth prisons is now over 500. Over 900. Over 900 children under JB Pritzker's care at our Illinois youth prisons are claiming that they were abused. Now, some of that goes before Pritzker's time, let's be clear, but Pritzker hasn't done anything about it, and his administration is actively trying to cover this up. So just a quick update, but when you talk about JB Pritzker, who supposedly is some great administrator, here's yet another example of the Pritzker failures as an administrator of this state. All right, last one here, DuPage County. Let's just talk about it quickly. Elections have consequences. As DuPage counties become blue and Democrats now run the county, they're now spending tax dollars like they're drunken pirates, because that's what they do. So they've now spent over $700,000 on a grant program. Last year, they spent $1 million on the same grant program, going to all sorts of far-left political groups focused on climate issues and DEI issues and all the rest. You can see this in the DuPage Policy Journal. I don't have time to go into it in more detail. But then you see it in Addison Township, where Democrats took over Addison Township. Now they're spending tax dollars, thousands of tax dollars, to hire some Democratic consulting firm with the public's tax dollars from Addison Township. Dennis Rebelletti called this out, rightfully so. This is what happens. Elections have consequences. We've seen it in Lake County. When Democrats took over Lake County, you ask Dick Barr that he's put up the numbers. Government spending until Democrats took control, and then zoom. You're seeing it now in DuPage County. All right. We're going to lose our guest shortly, so let's go to our final segment, our Clowns of the Week. OGs and Clowns of the Week. What do you guys got this week?
I'm going to do an OG that's a little bit out of the box. Maybe it's a twofer. I know there was some backlash to the hiring of Avery Bourne and Bailey, but she's very conservative. She's smart and she knows her stuff. And I don't know if the credit goes to Tony McCovey for picking Avery, or the credit goes to Avery Bourne for willing to step up and take the job of chief of staff. I actually think that some of the Freedom Caucus are going to be happy with the way she conducts herself in that office. I really enjoyed Andrew Fry was a friend and was there for a long time. But I think Avery Bourne is going to surprise people in that position. I think anybody who underestimates the skill of Avery Bourne does so at their own peril.
Yeah, just to give context for those who don't know, there are some people who are upset at the choice because of obviously her pairing with Richard Irvin running for governor. And here's the thing I'll clarify, Mark. There wasn't really an outreach to that Freedom Caucus. There wasn't like, hey, this is what's going to happen. Avery didn't reach out and say, hey, I want to work with you guys. This could have been handled better, but I don't know Avery like you do. So my hope is, you're right. My hope is that she's great in this job. We got to hope for the best. We got to cheer on our fellow Republicans because the only way we're going to succeed is if people get in the job and do a good job. So I'm going to say, I hope she does a great job, and I hope you're right.
Yeah, to be clear, it's a staffing position. I mean, nobody came to me when Freiheit was hired over Scott Reimers. I don't know why people think they would have the right to every ins and out of every staffing position. I think they're blowing it up like this is the chosen to be the head of the party. It's staff on Tony McCombie's someone on Tony McCombie's staff, which is why I think just the whole thing was kind of odd. Some of their complaints I don't think apply, but she's got skill. So I look forward to seeing what happens.
Okay. All right. Who else has got some?
All right, I got a couple of OGs. Don DeWitte, I didn't get to say anything about him earlier on. Don's, I think, a great senator. I've done a great job taking on big, important issues in Springfield and done so in a serious way. He's not the kind of guy who's just looking for a little soundbite or a quip here or there. I mean, he's really engaged on stuff, and we don't have enough folks who are really willing to do that kind of work to get to know an issue. So he's certainly one. The other one, the Cubs, we got the All-Star game coming to Chicago.
That's a big
Really
deal. That's cool.
It's going to be a big opportunity. So, yeah, I mean, I think, Chicago used to be kind of one of the go-to places in the country for a lot of high-profile national events. We've lost that for a few years. Let's bring that back. We used to have, political conventions all the time. We used to have, a lot more of the trade shows Chicago would be the number one place on the list for them. Sporting events, we can't host a Super Bowl yet, but once that new stadium gets built, we'll be on that list too. So celebrate the All-Star game while we can. That's pretty cool.
Being at Wrigley, listen, I'm a Cubs fan, but that being at Wrigley is a cool thing. I love it.
I have to give a clown of the week to Representative Amy Murray-Briel for not stopping her staffer from primarying Eric Sorensen, considering that IL-17 and her state rep district are probably the two most competitive in the entire state. So that's probably not an enemy that you would like to create there.
Yeah, not wrong.
I have two clowns of the week and two OGs. First clown of the week is Fritz Kagi because he did not get reslated by the Cook County Democratic Party for county assessor. His reign as county assessor has been a disaster. I just saw a notification from the city of Oak Forest that says that I want to make sure I get this right, that your certificates of error applications are temporarily on hold because the county is updating all of their systems. So you're not getting a refund. You can't submit your applications, nothing. So great job, Fritz. We're still waiting on the next round of property tax bills to come out also. The other clown of the week is also from Cook County, the Cook County Clerk's Office, who put out petition requirements for township committee people race done a completely different way than they did 4 years ago, which is leading to a massive debate on whether or not the county was wrong 4 years ago when they put out the petition requirements for township committee person, or if they're wrong now. And it's been blowing up my phone all day because nobody seems to know the answer whether they're wrong 4 years ago or they're wrong now. I think they're wrong now. Any smart person thinks they're wrong now, but no, really big money attorneys are saying, no, they're right this time. They were just wrong for you. Whatever. It's stupid. Someone just figure this out so we know how many petitions you're supposed to get for township committee person. And two OGs. We lost two great people this week. We lost Ozzy Osbourne, the godfather of heavy metal music. We knew it was coming. He just had his last concert a few weeks ago. Yeah. It was really cool. It was heartwarming. You look at me and you don't think I'm into this, but Black Sabbath's my favorite band of all time. I love Ozzy Osbourne. May he rest in peace. And just today, Hulkamania, Hulk Hogan has also passed away. He was a true MAGA American patriot, and he was just an amazing human being, all things considered. So rest in peace, Ozzy Osbourne. Rest in peace, Hulk Hogan. We lost two great ones.
Nice. I'll be quick on mine because I know we're out of time here, but I've just got one this week. And my clown is everybody who rushes to the defense of the Safety Act without actually looking at the details. So Megan Boss has been in the news, and the facts are that an illegal immigrant was involved in her death. He stuffed her body in a garbage can filled with bleach, kept it there for 2 months, covered it up. Yeah, there's other details, but you've got the left rushing to the defense of the Safety Act because this guy was put right back out in the streets. And here's the deal. You talk to judges, and regardless of cash bail and all those other details with this, part of what happened with the Safety Act and with the surrounding legislation is that judges their hands were tied. They're not allowed. They have no space. If the state's attorney, like a far left state's attorney like Eric Reinhart, doesn't come in and say, we want to hold this person, the judges have no choice but to let those people back out on the streets. There are things within the Safety Act beyond just cash bail that don't get talked about, and how our judges have been hamstrung in their ability to keep people under lockup if they need to be kept out, if they're dealing with a state's attorney like Reinhart, is not talked about enough. So these people are rushing and saying this Megan Boss situation is being blown out of proportion. They're wrong. They're lying to you. All they're trying to do is cover up for a bad bill because they don't want you to know that in some areas it is actually a really bad bill. With that, we'll do closing thoughts. We'll let Tom and Mark go first just because we're over our time. So if they need to go, I want to respect them. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, closing thoughts. I mean, as we've talked about throughout this day, the petition season is upon us. The number of candidates in key races continues to be really lagging where we need it to be. You know, we don't have the kind of that vibrant choice of a bunch of different candidates and a bunch of people pitching different ideas. That's a big problem for us. And you know, I'm not sure we can even get that solved in this cycle, but it's something we got to really think about. Is if you don't have a few people who even have this in mind a week before petition season, that's just you're starting 50 yards behind the competition, and you're just not going to catch up.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm going to dovetail right off of that. I love Porter. I love Dabrowski. Step up or get out. Like we if there needs to be a plan B, I'd like to get there.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Thank you both for being with us. Chris and Michael, you both were good, but I don't know. Chris, we beat up on you a lot. So Michael, go ahead. We'll let Chris go last.
All right. I was just kind of in conjunction with what was just said. We talked last week ad nauseum about all the different opportunities in this state. There are opportunities for state rep, for state senate, for county-wide offices. Like you got to make a decision, get on the ballot, give it your all, because like we got a country to save, and it starts here.
Chris, go ahead.
Illinois Republicans, this is a threat. If you guys don't find someone to run for some of these statewide offices, I want you to imagine me running, okay? As I mentioned earlier, I would be the front runner for several of these statewide offices. And I just want you to imagine, because frankly, I'm not going to do it. You think I got the time or I make enough money to zip-zag across this state getting petitions? No. But think about the fact that whoever does end up running for these positions, it's probably going to end up being even worse than me if someone good does not step up. And that's a threat. To all of you movers and shakers out there, I need you guys, and I'm doing it too. I'm talking to people. Hey, Mark Batinick, you want to run for comptroller? Call me after this episode. We'll talk. We'll do business. But we need movers and shakers other than me, other than Michael, other than Collin, to go out there and find good candidates for public office. Because if not, you're going to end up with the bottom tier candidates like Chris Jackowiak for comptroller, and that does not do the party any good. Everyone have a wonderful weekend and rest up before petitions.
Yeah. All right. I'll just stick with the same theme, but I'll go back to our first topic in DCFS. I'll say her name again because Pritzker won't do it. Mackenzie Femley. Pritzker, please. I dare you. Say her name. Somebody step up. We've got young people who aren't even with us anymore, who could have been the great leaders of Illinois in a generation, who aren't with us anymore because our governor can't see fit to actually govern this state. We got to step up. Let's go. Petitions are not that long from now. What? A little over a week. Let's go. With that, we'll close it down. Thank you to Tom. Thank you to Mark. Thanks a lot to Michael, a little bit to Chris. We'll catch you all next week on the Smoke-Filled Room. I didn't get poured on. It's a good week. Let's go. Let's get out there. See you guys later.
Yeah.